Hi, baby boomer fans. We are Jackie and Janine, the Pfeiffer sisters, and love to talk about the 1950s, inviting you to reminisce with us as we explore experiences of that decade. Grab your favorite malt or Green River. Make sure you are wide awake and get ready to be inspired about the 1950s. Welcome to the 1950s Fun Chat. Hello, everyone. We're so glad that you've joined us to learn more about that wonderful time in America called the 1950s. Jackie, this is kind of an anniversary time for us because this is the 200th 1950s Fun Chat that we will have streamed to our channel, our YouTube channel. And it has been amazing at all we have learned about the 1950s. But on top of that, all the friendships that we've gained with our guests who have been so gracious to join our Fun Chat and tell our viewers about the 50s. Would you agree to that?
I agree. And I also want to point out the purple banner below. Please do check out www.whilethewindmillwatched.com. That is the title of our book that spurred this Fun Chat. It is also the site of much information, such as our vendors, the events that we attend, the Fun Chats itself, and lots of other information too that you might be interested in. And you'll notice in the upper right-hand corner or left, depending upon where you are, there is the book, the 1950s, the While the Windmill Watched, a slice of rural America in the 1950s. So let us get on with the show. So the topic of this Fun Chat is friendship. A good friend is someone who offers a mutual support and trust and is a person with whom you feel comfortable being around. A good friend supports you and makes you feel appreciated. A good friend shows a genuine interest in your life, accepts and respects you for who you are, and makes you feel better about yourself. Jane Nash will share her story of what that term good friend means. Jane was born in Ames, Iowa in 1963, the daughter of a professor of anthropology and a social worker. She attended Grinnell College, a small liberal arts college in Iowa, where she majored in psychology and Spanish. Jane attended graduate school at Ohio State, where two wonderful things occurred. She earned her PhD in psychology, and she met her husband. Her plans to stay in the Midwest changed after marrying a Rhode Islander, however. In 1992, Jane and her husband moved to Mansfield, Massachusetts, and she began her teaching career at Stonehill College, where she continues today. She is grateful to be employed by a college that values teaching and mentoring students. Jane and a group of childhood friends are the subject of a New York Times bestseller called The Girls From Ames by Jeffrey Zaslow. So, Jane, we welcome you to the 1950s Fun Chat.
Yes. Well, Jackie and Janine, thank you so much for having me.
All righty. So let's begin our chat a decade before the 50s and then work into the 50s and the 60s. So we understand that your mom's family fled from Nazi Germany. So please tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so to set the stage, my mom was born, Hannah. I'm going to actually name people because it gets too confusing. So Hannah Rosenberg my mother, was born in 1935 in Germany, and her family was Jewish. We are Jewish, and Germany during that time was not going so well for the Jews. So basically, her maternal grandparents, so that's Kada and Alfred Spear, and their teenage daughter, Eva Spear, who was 16, were able to get a sponsor in the United States to get out of Germany. You couldn't get out otherwise. You needed somebody that would sign for you that if they didn't want you on welfare here, so they would financially take care of you. And that was a cousin. And the only reason they found out things were so terrible is my Ludwig, my mom's father, had some business in Switzerland, and they said things are really getting bad. You got to get out, because they didn't really know how bad it was in Germany. They were really keeping things under wraps about sort of how terrible it was. They didn't really know what was going on. So that maternal grandparents and their teenage daughter Eva came to the U.S. In 1936. And they were allowed to take things, no money. So they could take furniture, they could take linens, those kinds of things, no money. And they were very smart. They were business owners there. They had to give up their business. They owned a fabric shop, I believe. Anyway, it was awful. But I say that about the money because Eva, the 16-year-old teenager, wore this gold bracelet.
Oh, wow.
And my sister has one. She wore it together as a necklace. It's melted down pure gold coins. So they took the gold money, melted it down, made this chunky bracelet that looks like costume jewelry. And Eva wore it on the ship, and they thought it was junky jewelry.
Whoa.
I got one, and my sister got one when we graduated college. And they're just beautiful. One of my jobs while I'm here in Ames is I wanted to go to Ames Silversmith and get some info on it. I don't know about anything other than its origin.
Sure. Jane, was your mom just a baby then?
Yeah. So now mom. So that she was born in 35, and this Eva and Kata and Alfred come over in 36. And then my mom, baby Hannah Rosenberg, age 2, comes over in 37 with her parents, Ilsa and Ludwig Rosenberg. So there was a year when there was some family in Lincoln, Nebraska. That's where they had the family. Lincoln, Nebraska. And then Ludwig, Ilsa, and baby Hannah Rosenberg came over in 1937. And they also went to Lincoln because the same cousin would sponsor them. And so they all lived in a house together. They started with absolutely nothing. I'll just give them names because I don't ever know if I should use who they are to me or who they are to my mom. Ludwig, Alfred, and Eva, Ilsa, everybody worked. And the men were in a dry cleaner. The women, Eva became a pharmacist. Anyway, but they started from just nothing. They all lived together and in Lincoln, Nebraska. And in the meantime, the family in Lincoln, so all those people I just mentioned, are in Lincoln, and the paternal grandparents, so Ludwig's parents, Benno Rosenberg, Hedwig Speyer Rosenberg, and Hedwig's brother, Julius Speyer, are still all in Germany. They weren't ready. They thought it was going to be okay. I don't know what all went into their decision. I don't know if they couldn't get sponsored exactly, but I think about it all the time. I mean, they were probably my age, well, probably a little bit older, but what are you going to just say everything, just uproot your entire lives where you've lived? So anyway, they didn't leave. And we have this treasure trove of letters between the family in Germany who eventually are seeing, oh my God, we've got to get out. I got out of here, and all these desperate pleas to family in Argentina, family in Israel, family in US, maybe even Cuba. I don't know. There was another South American country or somewhere there, desperately trying to get out and talking about all the terrible things that are happening. And what's amazing about this is we have a two-way conversation because the Lincoln people were writing in carbon copy.
Oh.
So we have the carbon copies of what they sent to Germany, and we have the German letters that came to Lincoln. And my dad's like project, and sadly he died 3 years ago and wasn't able to finish this project. And Kathy, my sister Kathy, and I are trying to figure out how we can help make it happen. And I think we have some good ideas, but he was getting the letters translated. They're in German script, the ones from Germany, and they're in German typewriter from Lincoln, Nebraska. But the German script is really hard to read. And so it has to be translated into regular German and then translated into English. And it's been a rigmarole doing that. But there are about 1,500 letters, I think. That's what my dad said. I don't know quite how many there are because they're in a bin and we haven't really dug through them. But this weekend, actually, Beth Dotan from the Nebraska Stories for Humanities is coming. My mom is highlighted on their website. It's a digital archive about Jewish people in Lincoln or in Nebraska. And she's coming this weekend to interview my mom, and we're going to give her all the letters, and she has a team of people who are going to translate them. So
Wonderful.
we're so excited.
Yes, right.
Okay, so I got to keep moving. So then mom and her family come over here, and one of her sponsor families, they're Jews, they're in the congregation in Lincoln, and one of the families that helped welcome them were Elaine and Bernard Gradwohl and David Gradwohl and John Gradwohl. David is my father. So we have pictures of my parents at 2 and 4.
Yeah.
I should have brought that picture. I actually have it in one of the books if you want me to hold it up, actually. But we have pictures of them at 2 and 4. Dad's family were kind of like the welcome wagon for the immigrants. And the families became very close friends. They celebrated every New Year's Eve together, holidays together. So mom and dad were just friends with each other. They called each other's parents uncle and aunt. Oh, I said aunt, and I'm from New England. I used to say aunt. Anyway,
no. Aunt is fine.
Well, yeah.
That's what we say.
You say aunt?
Aunt. Aunt. We say aunt.
I grew up saying aunt. And so my kids on their own have Aunt Kathy and Aunt Lisa on my side. And on Justin's side, they have Aunt Lisa or Aunt Mary and Aunt Karen.
Yeah.
We didn't even tell them that. They just,
yes.
I guess that's what.
Anyway, okay. So your parents met as toddlers, sort of.
Exactly. And they were just family friends. And when they started dating, or when they got engaged, my dad said to my mother, "You're going to have to drop the Uncle Bernard and Aunt Elaine. This looks incestuous."
Yeah. So
that's kind of how they met.
Okay. So that is definitely a friendship that developed. But we'd like to hear about another friendship, about your friendships, and tell us how friendships are an important part of a woman's or a girl's development. And how did you meet your best friends in Ames? And you usually there's a best friend or two best friends, but you have almost a dozen. Tell us about that.
Oh, I'd love to. Favorite topic. So just to set the stage there. So I was born and raised in Ames, 1963. I was born, graduated from Ames High in 1981 and Grinnell College in 1985, and went to graduate school and met my New England husband and have been out there since. But I was planning on staying in the Midwest. I wanted to live in Minneapolis. So that didn't happen. But I do love New England and I love my family, but I do miss the Midwest so much. People are so friendly out here, as you North Dakotans can attest.
We call that North Dakota nice.
Yeah, totally. You get to Des Moines and their airport and they're just helping you with all your bags, and Logan Airport, they're like running you over. But I grew up on 606 Lynn, right up from Iowa State. My dad was a professor, so that's how we ended up at Iowa State in Ames. And my mom was a social worker she went back to school when we were in junior high, or I was in junior high. But I had an older brother, Steve. He graduated from Ames High in 1979. Tragically, he died in 2013, and it's been
So how
biggest
did you?
loss of my life. But our friends, Steve and I were in, and then my sister graduated from Ames High I graduated in 81, and Kathy graduated in 3 years before that. What is that?
78.
Or I mean, later,
81,
84.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, we grew up on Lynn Avenue, and my dad was able to walk to the university, and we went to Crawford and then went to Welch Junior High and Ames High. And I mentioned this because we had a really close Jewish family. And I think that my family closeness set the stage or laid the foundation for me to have close friends, because we would just sit around the dinner table talking. I mean, when my brother died, Brad Jones, one of his best friends that he'd known since first grade, talked about what it was like to go to the Gradwohl house. And he just said, this was not like his house. My dad was an anthropologist, so we had masks all over the wall, baskets, pottery, everything. We were chattering, no talk about the weather or sports. I mean, it was, what did you do? What are you thinking about? Where's your passion? I mean, he was thinking, man, I think I'd like to grow up here in this house. If my parents wouldn't be mad, I think I'd like to be here. And so we just had such a great family. And of course, Steve's death then, of course, was so tragic for 1,000 reasons. But one of them is like we lost the hub of our wheel, because he was a doctor and he was the only son and the firstborn, and was just an all around amazing guy. So there's that. But we survived, I think, and I would say even are thriving now. His daughters just got married, one in June and one last week in Washington State, and last August in Michigan. So I'd say we're thriving, but we miss him dearly.
How did then your solid foundation, family foundation, what was within you at that point to start developing these friendships with the 10 other young ladies? And I'm assuming this happened when you were just really young.
So some of the girls met when they were Carla and Jenny. I think I'll tell you the names. Can I list all the names and then I'll tell you a little?
Sure.
Okay. So some of us met, say, in junior high. Some of the Central girls met. Carla and Jenny were in the hospital. Their birthdays are a couple days apart. They were in the hospital at the same time when they're at Mary Greeley. So some met early. Three of the gals went to St. Cecilia's school. Some went to grade schools together. But the main deal, because I can't remember, we had somebody at Fellows, somebody at Crawford. I went to Crawford. Once Marilyn went to Sawyer. So I don't know all the ones. But what I do know is Jane Gradwohl, myself, I'm using all our maiden names, Angela Bendorf, and Marilyn McCormick. We all went to Welch Junior High together. Marilyn's father was Dr. McCormick, the pediatrician in town, and pretty much most of us had him as a doctor. So she became my best friend, and he was my doctor, and he was also the doctor that diagnosed my brother's Hodgkin's disease. So our families were really close. He survived that and probably became a doctor because of that.
Jen, how did you pick her as a friend?
She was like my twin. We looked alike. We both had we were short, dark hair, had really amazing parents who just embraced us. I loved going to her house. It was just, Oh, they were into the arts, music. They did so many fun things. I went skiing with them. I went canoeing with them. We went to Lake Minnewaska and went sailing. I mean, they were fun, and they were intellectual, and they were just all the good things. So we were just best friends.
Mhm.
I mean, best friends, like for Valentine's Day in junior high, we got each other star sapphire necklaces, and mine said, to MM, love JG, and it was a star sapphire, and hers says, to JG, love MM. I mean, it was like we were like girlfriend. I mean, like romantic. It was really funny. I mean, we loved each other so much. Angela moved to Ames in junior high, so we met her and we were friends, but I had known Marilyn earlier. We actually did some children's theater. We actually did children's theater, I think, in grade school, but we didn't really click until junior high.
So how many total?
Literally we clicked in Mrs. Pierre's English class. She showed us some movie, and I think we were both crying, and I think we both felt like we're like kindred spirits or something.
Yes. How did you, I mean, this is a large group of friends who still have a strong friendship, even in adulthood, even today. So can you identify a trait or characteristic that just knitted you all together? And how many were total friends?
Okay. So I will answer that question. I got to tell you who the Central girls were. So it's Jenny Benson, Kelly Zwagerman, Diana Spear, Sally Brown, Kathy Hyland, Carla Derby, Karen Brady, and Sheila Walsh. So they're all the Central girls. Our groups kind of, Central and Welch kind of gelled because my brother was a senior in high school, or going to be a senior in high school, and he had all the cool senior boys, and I met all these cute sophomore girls, and Jeremy Shires was living at our house, and he was Steve's best friend, and Diana Spear was a knockout, and he said, Jane, introduced me to her, and I did at the country club pool over here, not far from Green Hills, and they started going out, and our friend groups became really good friends. And so that's really how so Welch and Central kind of melded that summer before high school, when all the senior boys were paying attention to the sophomore girls. Because remember, we only had 3 years of high school, so we were the newbies. There was ninth grade was still in junior high. And I don't know quite what drew us together. The only thing I can really think of is we all had really incredible families. I think we all had families who were really loving and set that foundation, because out of 11 of us, there are none of our parents that got divorced. Out of 11.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean,
so
the rate of divorce is like 1 in 2 or 1 in 3 people.
Yes.
So we became friends in high school, and we had, nicknames and had parties, went to Friday night football and parties together. And we did special holiday swaps where you'd pick a name and you'd have to get something special for that person. And we were just glue.
So I take it then that because of the influence of your parents who lived through the 50s, there was the bonding then, not only in the family, but it opened up a bonding to occur among others who had that same background.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
And the same morals, same beliefs.
Yes.
But were they all?
We had kind of the same sort of moral compass.
Mm-hmm.
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 Yeah. Were they all Jewish?
No. I was the only Jew.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So,
that is good to know.
So when we get to this book that I'm going to talk about, Jeffrey Zaslow, who was the author, was Jewish and grew up in a very Jewish part of Michigan and Broomfield or something like that. And he couldn't believe I didn't have any Jewish friends. And what did the girls think of having a Jewish friend? And they said, we never really thought about it. I mean,
No.
we went to her confirmation at the Ames Jewish congregation, and they certainly knew I was Jewish and knew our family's Holocaust history. But she said probably more unusual is that her house looked like a museum and her dad was a really funky archaeologist. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So,
Yes. Okay.
so basically what happened is we all went to college, of course. I mean, I should say of course, but we did all go to college because in Ames High, you just go to college. It's not, are you going to college? It's sort of, where are you going to college? We all went to college. And one of our friends, Sheila Walsh, died when we were, no, actually I had started grad school. So she was still in college, but I was in graduate school. So we did lose one of our group, which was very tragic.
Oh, I bet.
She fell and died immediately, but her body, she was a young, fit person, and her eyes were donated, her heart was donated, she was the daughter of the dentist in town, Dr. Walsh. So a lot of people knew the family, and it was very tragic. So we all go to college, and we're sort of doing, and it's before the internet. So we're kind of writing letters, but not really. We'd see each other when we came home for Thanksgiving, but we were still close, but we were just doing our thing. And then people started getting married. And then that was really fun because now we're going to everybody's wedding. So lots of weddings. And then we started having kids, and now we're really busy with that. Most of us have kids. One doesn't have children, but out of the 10 who survived like adulthood, 9 of us have children. And I could count, but I won't, how many kids we have among us, a lot of them. And so we're doing kids, we're doing mothering, some of us had work outside of the home, some of us didn't. So we have a couple teachers. Sally was a teacher in 5th grade. Kelly was a teacher in high school. Diana was a CPA, but worked at Starbucks. She has so much fun, travels all over, does cool things. She just said, hey, I don't like CPA. I like talking to people and serving them coffee and all this cool stuff. She travels a ton with it. Jenny is a assistant to the president at the University of Baltimore, Maryland. She has a really high-powered job. When Jeff wrote about us, he said, did you guys have a leader? And I kind of said, Jenny. She wasn't really a leader, but she was the organizer, like the one that, like if somebody's parent dies, she arranges the flowers and she arranges, she's organized.
So
Angela owns her own PR firm, and Karen was a stay-at-home mom. Marilyn was a stay-at-home mom. Carla was a stay-at-home mom. Kathy is a makeup artist and screenwriter in California. Kathy has the most glamorous life. She has all kinds of amazing clients, writes us like a typical day, like doing Jamie Lee Curtis, blah, blah, blah. And we're like, at the time we're like, this one's like, I'm changing diapers and you're going to these and,
Yeah.
So how when you were in your child rearing years, does that ever cease, really, even with adult children? But when your children were living at home and the children of your friends were living at home, were there ever times that you were exasperated and just wanted to have a get together with all of them and share your concerns and have their advice given to you?
Oh my God. I mean, if you would look at our text chain. So once texting came in, we have something called GFAs, Girls From Ames. That's GFAs. So, oh my God, you can get any kind of advice on there. And, and it's so funny because Jenny had the children latest. And so her daughter, Mimi, is going to be a senior in high school. So she's all the rest of us our kids are all out of the house. So poor Jenny's having these babies and she's saying, what happens with, I'm having a hard time nursing and like nobody's answering. And I can't figure out this breast pumping machine. And my the girls are being nasty, or the boys, she has a girl and a boy, you know, this one wants to, you know, they want to drink, and nobody's paying attention to her because we're all now off. And she's like, you guys, I have questions. You've all been and I felt really bad because we're on to, like, now 3 of them have grandchildren. So now all of them, it's like grandchildren, and when are people retiring, and, you know, how do you get through menopause? And I just went to a wedding, and I'm like, what do you know about shapewear? I've never worn it. You know, is it Spanx or Honey Love? And what kind of makeup? Because I don't really wear makeup. And I mean,
Okay.
I don't go to the internet. I go to the Girls From Ames.
Yeah.
All right. So now then, how did this author, Jeffrey, hear of your story, and why did he think it would be a good story, and how'd you get on the bestseller list?
Yeah, this is such a crazy story, seriously. So
okay.
Jeff Zaslow was a Wall Street Journal reporter, reporter, I guess it is. And he had a column called Moving On, which was supposed to attend to the hearts and minds of the business people. So it was a human interest column. So his was not anything financial or business or economic or anything. And he wrote this. So he had this column, and he wrote a column about a group of women who had been friends for many, many years. They were in Chicago. And he just talked about how women just love their friends, right? Mm-hmm. And he heard from 300 some people saying, oh my God, those girls from Chicago, they had a name called I forget the name, like Us Guys or Us Gals or something like that. Just like that, you know, we love each other. We're all going to end up in a retirement community when we're old because women live longer. And Girls From Ames right now are thinking Green Hills is looking pretty good.
It is pretty good.
Nobody lives in Ames, but Diana's father had been here for a brief time. Carla's mother lived here. Kelly's parents do live here, and my mom lives here. So anyway, we're thinking that this might work, but we'd all have to come back to Iowa. None of us live in Ames, and Sally's the only one that lives in Iowa. She lives in Spirit Lake or Spencer, one of those. So Jenny Benson, I'm still going to use maiden names. Jenny Benson writes Jeff a letter and said, oh my God, I have these 11 friends from high school. Well, we all coalesced in high school, and we mean everything to each other. And we've always said, you know, we're there for each other, for the joys, for the, you know, and we've had a lot of joys in our group, and we've had a lot of tragedy. Carla lost her daughter to leukemia. Sheila Walsh died. Everybody's lost parents. We only have, my mom is alive, Jenny's father is alive, and Kelly has both of her parents. Angela's lost a brother. I've lost a brother. Diana's lost a brother. Angela's lost her mom as well. Angela is the only remaining person of her original family. Her brother died of AIDS. Her father recently died of, he was older, and her mom had cancer. And she had cancer. Angela had cancer, the same kind of cancer her mother had. Kelly had cancer. Kelly sent all her hats to Angela. I mean, it's just, we've had a lot of stuff. But I don't think it's so unique, because literally if you get 11 people together, well, 10 who are alive, I mean, you're going to have stuff. So I imagine, Jackie and Janine, if you get your 10 best friends together, there's going to be divorces, there's abortion, there's happiness, sadness, drug problems, alcohol, blah, 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 you know, whatever.
Jane, what I think is so interesting, you just mentioned something that if Jackie and I were get all our friends together, et cetera, what it would be like. When I first talked with you and I learned of your story and then the book, I could not identify with that because I didn't have best friends. And I had friends, but none of them were besties.
Was Jackie your best friend?
No.
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, I had schoolmates, but also you have to think that we lived a different lifestyle than what you did. I think perhaps a rural lifestyle might sway the I'm going to say sway against the need for best friends. My best friends were animals because I was around them all the time, and we were in an environment that shaped that.
As a psychologist, that reminds me, there's a term called propinquity, and it means geographical closeness, and it's one of the predictors of friendship. So you had propinquity with animals, and I had propinquity with people.
Sure.
Sure. But I don't know if I think rural is one factor, but it's not I think there's also a generational thing, because my mom didn't really, she's a bit older than you, but I think there is some generational thing here too, that women had friends, but I don't think they confided in them. Like, we grew up during the, like, I am woman, hear me roar,
Right.
I mean, none of us are men haters at all. We, 9 of us are, have been married, and we love men, but we need our women. You know what I mean? And so I think we really confide in each other. My mom, Kathy, my sister, and my mom and myself spread some of my brother's ashes in Colorado, because that's where we vacationed every summer. And we had such a bonding time with my mom. And we were talking about, like, first sexual experiences and all this stuff. And she said, I never talked to anybody about this. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we do. I mean, we have a code of silence among ourselves. Like, you cannot talk about what happens at a Girls From Ames reunion. That is what happens at a Girls From Ames reunion stays there, So I think it is a little generational too, a little bit.
That could very well be. Yes.
So basically, just getting back to the story. So Jenny wrote Jeff. Jeff heard from all these people. He said, oh my God, women love their friends. I'm going to put all these letters away because I can't do it right now because he's too busy with his column. And he's also had applied to be Dear Abby and won it. And so he was the advice columnist for that.
Can you imagine a man being an advice columnist for Dear Abby?
And some of the stuff he told us was so funny. Like, some guy wrote in and said, I want my wife to get breast enhancement. And he wrote back and said, I think he should get rid of you. You're the boob or something. I don't know. It was really, had a really good sense of humor. But anyway, he had a lot going, but he put those the letters away and said, I am going to do something with that, because he had 3 daughters of his own. So he got it. So 3 years later, after that column came out, he dug up all those 300 and some letters and said, I'm going to pick the 10 I find most compelling and contact them, see if they're still friends, see if they would work with me. And he decided on Jenny's. Jenny is a terrific writer. So probably part of it is she does, like, all the communication at her university. So she writes really well. So does Angela. So does Kelly. We have really good writers, communication and teachers of English and so on. And our Ames High teachers taught us well. Mr. Forsman, Mrs. Bowski, Mrs. Campbell. We had great English teachers at Ames High. And so she called us or emailed us, I think. We're on email now, because it's probably about, trying to think of the time frame. I'm thinking it's about maybe 2007. And Jenny sends us an email. So we do more text, but we do email as well. And she said, hey, there's this guy who wants to write a book about us. What do you think? And me being if people know me, I'm very willing to share, but like random people, that's kind of scared me. And probably, especially because I'm a professor, and I'm thinking, he said we would have to use our real names. And I thought, so it's going to be Jane Nash, a professor of psychology at Stonehill College, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like talking about the keggers in the cornfields of Iowa and all the things. And I'm trying to tell my young daughters, like, don't underage drink and all this. So I don't want my kids to really, I will tell my kids, I did want to share a lot of these stories with my kids, but not when they're underage and I'm trying to get them not to underage or drink and drive and all the things. So anyway, but most of the other people were much more interested. And I'm like, okay, well, these are my girls. I'll go with it. So he started by, I think, phone calling each of us and just had a conversation to find out kind of where we lived and what our deal was, were we married, blah, all the things. And then he met us in regions. And so we had 3 people on the West Coast. That's Kathy, Diana. Oh no, just Kathy and Diana. Kathy and Diana on the West Coast. He met with them together. Then he met with the Midwesterners, which are Kelly, Sally, who's in Iowa, but the other ones are in Minneapolis. Marilyn and Carla, met with them in Minneapolis. And then he met with the East Coasters, who was Jenny, Angela, Karen, and me, myself, and met with us in our little our groups. That was in person. And then we had a reunion planned already because we reunion pretty much every other summer. For a while, we were doing it every year, but we couldn't get everybody. And so we said, let's do every other, and then you have to come. And if you don't come, we're going to talk about you. So, people come. And you don't want to leave early either, because if you leave early, you might get talked about.
So thinking about that,
I mean, not in a bad way, but you're always like, what were you guys, what did I miss, But also kind of it is.
As young girls, did you ever talk about each other if the other one wasn't there? Was there?
Well, there was a really kind of bad situation that's talked about in the book, and I wasn't there, thank God, because it's terrible. And really, I remember when I had my own children, Hannah and Sarah, and my husband's name is Justin. Just want to throw them out there. They're the center of my world now. When they were going through junior high things, it reminded me of this so much. And girls can be so mean. So apparently, what happened? This is detailed in the book.
If you don't want to share that, we could buy the book.
No, it's in the book. It's in the book.
Okay.
So, I mean, if it's in the book, it's on the national bestseller list. You can read it. But no, I mean, there were tragedies in there. Like everything in the book, I will say, is true. Not everything is in there. So there's some omission, but there's not false.
That's
okay. No fake news in that book.
Yeah.
No fake news. We do real information, but maybe the whole story isn't quite in there, but this story is in there. So Sally Brown, I don't know. Some people they had a sleepover at Kathy Hyland's house. Some of the girls decided they needed to tell Sally some of what they thought she could improve on or something. I don't know what they didn't like about her. And so they had an intervention and told her bad things. And then she went home crushed, of course. And her mom I think she was a librarian, and she was very wise. And she said, you need some new friends. That is so mean. And so it took a long time for Joanne Brown to come back around, because those girls were mean. But that was the only thing I think was that I know of that was really mean.
Did you reach out, or did any of the group reach out to her to bring her back in, or did she have to come back in on her own volition?
I don't even remember that it happened. So I think it was more the Central girls. I mean, we were in high school, so I knew them, but I don't know when it happened. I didn't remember that it happened. I don't know. You'll have to phone one of the gals who was there. But in the book, it just said some people were there. And anybody I would talk to, I would always say, I wasn't there. I wasn't there. I wasn't there. I wasn't there. I was more picked on than then I wasn't like there's a situation that's detailed in the book where only once somebody said, we were picking teams up at the field at the end of Lynn. There was a group of people playing, I don't know, touch football, or I don't know what we were playing. And a bunch of people were there, and there were two captains, and they had to pick a team. And one guy said, I don't want the Jew on the team.
Oh.
And I also had a situation where people, when I was in grade school, there were three of us who were friends, and they thought it would be funny they said, we're going to go sledding, come to my house. So I walked around the block to Ash, and all in my snow pants and snow boots and hat and everything. And they were over at the other girl's house. So they just wanted me to get all like dressed in. Yeah. So I mean, maybe if I was a stronger person, I might have been, I hope I wouldn't be, but maybe I would have been a mean girl, but I wasn't. I was more the one that was kind of picked on. But it worked out okay in high school because my brother was a senior. And don't mess with Steve's sister. So I had bodyguards by then.
Okay. Jane, we're nearing the end of our chat time already. And
wait, can I just say really quickly, the book came out in 2009. It was on the New York Times best-selling list. Jeff came to our reunion, detailed it. The book is set at the reunion, and we went on all these tours with him, and it's been a ride.
How do people obtain a copy of The Girls From Ames by Jeff Zaslow?
So it's on Amazon.
Okay.
The publishing company, I think it was Penguin, or I can't remember, but they had a website that was active and had a lot of stuff on there, and is not active. And Jenny, our leader, is in contact right now trying to give us proprietary rights to the website so we can update it, because people are interested in what's going on. And I think there's some interest among our group to say, we have a lot of authors in our group, or get somebody to say, what are the Girls from Ames doing 20 years later? Because the book came out in 2009. And by the time, if we ever got a little update together, it'd probably be almost 2029.
This is fascinating. Thank you, Jane Nash, for being our guest today, and just talking about how friendships and the value of friendships and how they last over time. And of course, it's family background, a lot of it, and respect for each other, values that you probably learned from your parents in the 1950s.
Absolutely. And just thank you to my Girls from Ames. So indebted. And thank you to my family of origin, Justin, Hannah, and Sarah. And thank you that's not my origin. That's my family right now. And thank you to my family of origin, Hannah and David Gradwohl, Steve and Kathy Gradwohl.
Yes.
And thank you today for joining us. Folks, please do join us next time when we continue our education of the 50s, previous to the 50s, during the 50s, and after the 50s. And so do tell your friends, even your relatives, about this 1950s fun chat. Till next time, toodaloo.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.